there is a couple of questions, but before I do start asking those questions, I will take the opportunity of being the moderator and ask a question first, because I thought it was really an interesting and I would say well-delivered presentation. Actually, it could have been a workshop on the Global Evidence Summit rather than oral presentation. But in any case, I think it's a really relevant topic, and it actually, I think it increased its relevance since perhaps, I mean, with each month, because of developments in AI, I would say this is becoming a more and more pressing issue. And that my question to you is, I don't know how you'll find it, but I just couldn't help thinking about adverse effects of the tool itself, because you are exposing basically, the things that you are looking for, and that means basically what fraudulent authors would want to cover, and they might use AI to do that increasingly successfully. So I'm just thinking, what do you think about that as a potential adverse effect and perspective of using AI to basically make the situation worse with fraud?
Yep. I can maybe say a couple of points and then hand over to you, Lene. So I guess in the first instance, I think this is where the aggregate level checks are really important. So you have to have, your ethics approval lined up and your trial registration. It's so there's a lot of governance issues as well that go in here. And then in terms of cheating the tool, I guess it is quite complex. This is probably the bit I'll hand over to Lene. Is that?
Yeah. I mean, we've discussed this a lot when we've brought up the tool, whether we just keep this for ourselves and kind of hide our cards so we can keep discovering wrongdoing ourselves, or whether we share it more widely to try to encourage more people to do the same. And in the end, we decided that us alone can maybe detect a handful of studies, whereas hopefully, when you look at paper mill studies, or if you look at these studies that are made up, the thing people try to do is they try to avoid work, right? So they're quite bad, a lot of them. So I think making up a data set that doesn't get flagged by our tool, and that's something also AI, we have actually trialed the tool with AI. So we've got AI to make up data sets for us, and then had students that were kind of blinded to what's the real data set and whatnot try to use the tool. And they did often find that AI didn't know what the relevant correlations would be that we'd then go for. And then again, also that there were inconsistencies between the publication and the data set and so on. So at the moment, we think we still come out ahead of AI, but it's certainly a battle that we have to keep on fighting. And that's why we also have to constantly update the tool, I think. Yeah, we're hoping that getting it out there will at least help us detect all the really lazy people and detect more studies than if we just kept hiding our cards.
All right. Okay, thanks. Just make sure not to feed the AI with your published paper next time. So the questions from the audience related to the types of studies that you can use, say, is this useful only for RCTs, or can you use that for other types, including animal studies? Any comments on that?
At the moment, it's RCTs only, but I think a lot of the checks could also apply to animal studies, such as which day an animal was examined or terminal digit bias. So we'd love to work with people working in those spaces to see how we can adapt it. So I think bits of it can already be taken across, but the whole tool as it stands is currently for randomized controlled trials.
Yeah, so we are considering, having different versions as well for observation studies or different study designs as well. But yeah, not yet.
Okay, I guess there's also interest in actually the responses to the requests for IPD. Say, for example, do you have an estimate on the percentage of positive answers to the request for sharing the IPD? How likely it is to get the IPDs?
Is this for an IPD meta-analysis, I'm presuming?
Wasn't specified.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of, and our group has been doing a lot of work led by Aidan Tan on kind of data sharing and policies and how the culture is changing. There are a lot of funders and journals now that require data sharing. So I think the tide is turning a little bit, and we're hoping that with the turning tide, we'll be able to get more and more data. And it really depends on the project. I think there's examples of IPDMAs gone really wrong and no one wanted to share data. Whereas if you get the right people into the boat early on and you have a lot of resources to invest in communication, we've got data sharing rates of 80% before. So it depends a bit, but what has worked previously when authors haven't shared data and we're concerned is then going back to the journals or funders that require data sharing and then they make them do it. Kylie, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that, I will say a lot of people, want to share their data and have interest in contributing. And sometimes there are quite a few regulatory barriers in terms of ethics, which of course is an important consideration. But sometimes some of these things take a while to get the data sharing agreements and everything in place. But definitely people are keen to share, in my experience.
Okay, so again, I think there's more questions around the types of studies and settings where this tool can be used. Say, real world evidence studies can be used for in vitro, I guess, basic science studies. How would you?
I think if you are interested in using the tool in these circumstances, get in touch and we can work together on which parts of the tool may apply to them. There's also checks that may be more relevant for those kind of studies that we haven't covered, such as images. But yeah, I think it can certainly be adapted, even though currently it's not designed for those studies.
Okay, so there's one question in terms of what to do when you identify a major issue in a manuscript. I think you had a slide on that, but if you want to repeat, I mean, are you just not including it in your evidence, or you go beyond that to report to somewhere?
Yeah, I can't wear that slide. Yeah, look, again, it depends. Yeah. So whether or not you include it in your evidence base is the decision tree that we showed. And then, of course, as Lene mentioned, that you could do a sensitivity analysis to see the effect of including versus excluding ones that are sort of gray area. I guess if you see trials that you have published trials that you have major concerns about, it would be an option to contact the journal editor and say, can you look into this? So I think, and I maybe the safe option is to refer people back to the Cochrane policy, I think, because there is some really good templates on emails that you can send to editors and so on. And yeah, the best way to proceed there.
And I suppose the delicate issue for us, as Kylie's mentioned, is that we collaborate with people. We do collaborative evidence synthesis. So we don't go and then after someone shared the data set in good faith, then go to the press and say they've made up their study. We actually just exclude the study without making much of a fuss about it.